Well, welcome to our third and final Student Connect learning session for spring 2022. Today, we're talking about personality profiles, group dynamics, and cultural fluency. My name is Amber Lewis, and I am the Lead for Minnesota Fellow serving NorthSpan as their Welcoming Community Program Coordinator. And I have gotten to host all of the Student Connect learning sessions for this semester. So I'm excited to be able to do that. So to get started today, here's our agenda. We'll have some brief welcome and introductions. We'll go over a little bit of that NorthForce data that we've been highlighting in each of our Student Connect sessions. And then we'll have a presentation by Stacy Johnston and Kevin Skwira Brown, who are our special presenters here today. A little bit of time for Q&A at the end of that, and we'll be sharing out some resources as well. We're in Zoom here today. Let me know if you need any help with any of the Zoom functions. You have control of your camera and microphone as always. You can use the chat box or the hand raise function to let us know if you have anything you need to communicate. So to get started today, as expected, we're going to go back to our elevator pitches that we worked on in our first Student Connect learning session, and you're all getting pretty good at them by now. So that's exciting. They're hopefully coming more easily as you've gotten used to presenting them. So to start, I'm just going to ask Stacy and Kevin, you can just give us your name and organization name because you're going to introduce yourselves more in depth later. But just let the students know who you are, name and organization. Stacy, can I ask you first?
Absolutely. I am Stacy Johnston with Audacity HR, and I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited.
Okay, Kevin.
And I'm Kevin Skwira Brown. I'm with Cultural Fluency Associates, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So looking at some of our regional data that we like to share with you, these are the top 10 most in-demand roles in Minnesota. This is based on the DEED data from January of 2022, so pretty updated. You can see their registered nurses are that #1 most in demand, salespersons, fast food and counter workers. Not really any surprise if you've been in the community that these are some high demand roles right now. Going down a little further, we have nursing assistants, heavy and tractor trailer truck drivers, stockers and order fillers. Just give you a little bit of an idea of the landscape right now, what we're looking at since the beginning of the year. So these are some entry-level roles in demand, and the breakdown is by industry. We actually have the breakdown of these by any industry basically that you can think of. I chose just a couple to highlight here today. So education and childcare are one of the industries that I wanted to look at. What are those entry-level roles that are in demand? And as you can see, teaching assistants, elementary school, secondary school teachers, preschool teachers, pretty much anything you can think of. Education and childcare are definitely looking for people in our region. And then a couple others, business management and operations. So their entry-level roles that are in demand right now are secretaries, administrative assistants, and office clerks. And then for community service and nonprofits, they're really looking for social and human service assistants, child, family, and school social workers, mental health and substance abuse social workers, and then counselors as well. So that's just a little bit of our regional NorthForce data. If you want any more information on any specific industry, as always, feel free to reach out to me and we can get that information sent out to you. It's just way too much to share over a short Zoom meeting, and it would probably get boring if it's not an industry that you're particularly interested in. So let me know if you want any data on any of those topics. So with that said, we're going to move into our presentation today on personality profiles, group dynamics, and cultural fluency. And we're very honored to have our guest, Stacy Johnston from Audacity HR and Kevin Skwira Brown from Cultural Fluency Associates here with us today. And I will turn the time over to them to let them introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
Okay, just making sure that you can see my screen. I just lost my Zoom. Oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Not working. All right. So feel free, Amber or Kevin, if there's anything that you can't see, if the sound isn't working, just unmute and then just jump right in. So very excited to be here for our conversation today. So a little bit about me and my organization. So I'm a small business owner here in the Northland, and I own Audacity HR. We provide HR solutions for mostly small businesses. So we work with those organizations that aren't big enough to have their own internal HR department, but they've got employees. And so whenever you have employees, there's a lot of things to figure out on the HR front. So we work with organizations to align their mission and their values and to really tap into what I call their biggest competitive advantage, which is their employees. Like, your employees always make or break the success of your organization. So really understand how to engage and empower your internal talent, and how to hire and recruit, which is a really hot topic for us today with a really tight labor market, low unemployment. So we do, pretty much everything from helping to look at policies, employee handbooks, looking at how to recruit and engage, looking at training, how do we create inclusive workplaces. So that's a little bit about me, and I will turn the mic over to Kevin.
Thank you, Stacy. So good afternoon, folks. Again, Kevin Skwira Brown with Cultural Fluency Associates. I use he, him pronouns, by the way. I was raised in rural Wisconsin. I lived about 10 years in Seattle, and now I reside in Duluth. I've lived here in Duluth for about the last 25 years. And drawing from those 10 years of direct social service experience in Seattle, from a little more than 20 years of teaching at the collegiate level and ongoing grassroots multicultural organizing, I develop, I present, and I facilitate or co-facilitate diversity, inclusion, and cultural development work with both individuals and then organizations who are striving to live in line with their values and missions. As I'm sure you're experiencing as you sort of start venturing into the business world, what used to be sort of a side thing, people would say, oh, our business is our business, and then sometimes we'll deal with sort of diversity and difference and our employees and who they are. But pretty much we just wanted to show up and do the work, and that's changed. Organizations and businesses know that in order to get the bottom line, you got to deal with who's in the room, and you got to be able to work effectively with who's in the room. And so the work that I do, and I do it in collaboration with colleagues, but I own the business myself, is I help organizations figure out how do we make the us work with regards to engaging with one another and engaging with our populations, our clients, and our consumers. So Stacy, if you can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about this notion of cultural fluency, sort of what is it and what's involved. And this is the short version. So here's a definition of cultural fluency. I think there's lots of ways to talk about cultural fluency. For today, we decided, it's really about our ability to be effective. It's about our ability to be effective with other people, regardless of the degree to which ours and their lived experiences, backgrounds, and perspectives differ. I use the term cultural fluency. You'll probably still hear or maybe have heard the notion of cultural competence. My initial business partner, Nan Provost, and I moved away from cultural competence pretty quickly because, so I'm in my late 50s now. I learned to drive a car 40 some years ago. I passed a test, they checked the box and said, you're competent to drive. I haven't had to go back and do any more driving lessons, any more assessment, any more development of my driving skills. I certainly got to learn, I drive better now than I did when I was 16, but in terms of competence, check mark. Fluency is that notion of, when people think fluency, they often think about language. I certainly do. And it's about ongoing development. I learned Spanish. I took some French in 7th grade. That didn't stick. I tried to learn Spanish when I was in my 20s before spending some time in Central America. That didn't stick. I tried to learn Swahili a little bit before going to East Africa. That hasn't stuck. it doesn't stick because I don't practice it. Fluency is this notion of we need to practice and we need to be working on the skills, on the awarenesses in order for them to stick. So that's why cultural fluency, not cultural competence, in my framework, in the framework that I use. And so when we think about cultural fluency, it exists in a multiple sort of realms or arenas. And Stacy, if you could go to the next slide. And I'm going to offer sort of 3 ways we might think about how to build or develop cultural fluency. And the first is within ourselves. Like, how do we develop our own skills, our own self-awareness? Sometimes in the jargon we use as cultural self-awareness, but how do I examine and reflect on how did I learn to be in the world? What are the assumptions that I make about how the world works and how interactions with people work? And even how do I see the world? That's about our internal work. That's our internal work, sort of my skills, my awareness is about myself. And the second realm is about our work with groups, with other people, with other individuals, a group of 2 or a group of large team. And that's really about how do we understand, how do we work effectively with other people, some of whom we might think are just like us and find out they aren't, and some of whom we think aren't like us at all. We might find out there's some ways that they are like us. But how do we work in teams? How do we work in groups? How do we work in organizations? And that involves, again, sort of leveraging the understanding of self to understanding other people and being able then to engage across difference. And then the third realm that I'm going to offer here is about systems and understanding how systems operate. The function of systems, and all businesses are systems. Every organization is a system. And every system has a set of assumptions, a set of norms, a set of often unspoken expectations as to how things happen. And understanding the foundations of that allows us to be more effective. So if we understand the components of systems, then we can go, so what does this particular system believe in terms of norms and expectations? Part of that work then, for me, that I would offer is that understanding the ways in which different people are treated by systems, included or excluded, centered or not centered. And that's sort of the work of cultural inclusion, is how do we build systems that work for everyone who's a part of it? And that's really the work that I do with organizations. It's sometimes helping them understand their norms and their expectations and their unwritten rules so that they can examine whether or not those are the ones that best serve their entire workforce. So cultural fluency, 3 realms: within ourselves, in our relationships with others, within the systems that we operate. Stacy?
All right, thank you for that, Kevin. Another part of this conversation that Kevin was just touching on is our mindset and how we can engage with curiosity, especially where we are, as Kevin mentioned, we're constantly learning and being exposed to things, and I love that word fluency and the ability for us as human beings to really constantly be learning and growing. And along that, I thought it would be fun to share a little bit about my own journey of being a college student and now where I am today. And when I was finishing up college, I really wanted this kind of straight path and wanted my future to be a clear path and smooth sailing straight ahead. But as many of you may have already discovered about life, this is a little bit more about what my path has looked like. And it's been a little bit of a winding road. And sometimes you don't really know the opportunities that lie around that next corner until you're kind of there and living life. And life is kind of what happens when you're busy making all your other plans. So a little bit of that embracing of the unknowns, the uncertainty, and your journey as you are in this program and as you're learning and growing in your academic studies. So talking a little bit about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Has anyone heard that lingo before? The difference. So awesome. So a fixed mindset can kind of make us stuck. And so some characteristics of what might show up with a fixed mindset is feeling like you're good at it or not. It's very one thing or the other. And if you get frustrated by something, you might just throw up your hands, walk away, be like, forget it. I'm not good at it anyway. I'm never going to be good at it. And then if you face failure in life, which of course you're going to, like there's no way to be where you are today without having faced failure. And there's no way that you're going to go forward without facing failure in your future. But the fixed mindset might say that, you know what, I'm a loser and I'm no good if something like that happens in life when you do face failure. And then if other people around you succeed, the fixed mindset might say, I'm threatened by that. And I'm not like helping you celebrate, I'm feeling threatened. So that's a little bit of what the fixed mindset might be telling you. So because of that, you might avoid challenges in life because you're worried about failure, or you're worried that either you're good or you're not good at something. And then you might think that what you got is what you got, and that you don't really have an opportunity to grow and develop. And another really interesting thing about this research is that when there's so much emphasis about whether you're smart or not, that can really hold you back. And really interesting dynamics, which I will touch on when we talk a little bit more about the flip side of that. So the growth mindset is really adopting a little bit more of an expansive view that, hey, you know what? We are lifelong learners, and I can figure stuff out. I might not know everything, and I'm certainly not going to start working for NASA anytime soon, at least not me personally, but there's a whole lot that I can figure out and learn. And if I get frustrated, you know what? I can stick to it. I can figure it out. I can reach out for help. That's that expansive mindset. And hey, when I screw up, I can own it. I can figure it out, and I can learn from that. And if you succeed, if peers succeed, if the people that I'm working with succeed, I can get inspired by that success. And that can lift me up rather than making me feel threatened. So then with your growth mindset, you might think, hey, I can embrace a challenge because I know that if I screw up, I can figure it out. And what really matters is not whether I'm smart or not smart, but how hard I try, whether I, embrace this growth mindset, and whether I put in some effort. Because at the end of the day, our effort and really, really counts. And so I like to think about that working smarter aspect. So we know that if you listen into your thoughts, you might catch yourself in that fixed mindset. And that's the opportunity to take a little bit more of an expansive approach and think about how can I adopt some more of those qualities of being in a growth mindset. And then another thing that I really like is that when we are in systems, as Kevin talked about, when we're working within organizations, I like to think about honoring feedback and thinking about that almost like feed forward. Like you're getting feedback, I'm sure, all the time from your peers, from your jobs, from your colleagues, from your professors. How can you take that and think about what does that mean for me as I move forward? All right, so we will jump into our next section. Feel free to jump in with any questions, thoughts, throw anything in the chat. And back to Kevin.
Sure. So when I'm going to just, so thank you, Stacy. Thinking back to sort of those three realms that I talked about, that within ourselves, learning about groups and how to operate in groups and how to operate in systems. This particular model and this sort of, it's an assessment, but it's also a model, really focuses on that first one, and in some degrees the second and third, but the focus is on the first one. So this is the intercultural development continuum is what the picture is. This reflects the model that's a part of the intercultural development approach. And the intercultural development approach is fundamentally trying to understand what are my sort of default ways for engaging with people who are similar or different from me, and what are the options that I might have. So underlying this is the assumption that we all have learned ways of engaging with people who are different from us. We've just developed them over time. It actually frames it as a developmental continuum. So sort of consistent with the growth mindset. It's not like, oh, I'm an introvert or an extrovert, that's how I'm always going to be. You know, I'm straight or I'm heterosexual or homosexual or bisexual, that's just who I am. This is a developmental continuum. It's the notion of we can develop with regards to what strategies we use for engaging around similarity and difference. So that's important to recognize. It's developmental. And what the researchers, when they studied this, and they studied international business, and they studied college students who studied abroad, so study abroad kinds of things, people who are engaged across cultural difference, and they noticed that people had, any given person had a particular strategy they tended to use most of the time, and that each of these strategies, they differed from one another, and further examination showed that some strategies might be particularly important or useful in one place, but not particularly useful in another place, or they had one benefit, but they had a shortcoming. So they developed this model for us to sort of become conscious of what are my approaches that I'm currently using, and then what other options might I have. So in real sort of briefness, sort of here's what the model, here's what they figured out, and here's what they offer us. They offer us that early in our development as humans, you know, sort of conscious humans, age 2, 3, 4, whenever we sort of become conscious of the world around us in a more overt way, we're operating from what they call a monocultural mindset. And a monocultural mindset is really about seeing the world, interpreting the world, responding to the world from our own cultural lens, our own sort of socialized way of understanding, here's how the world is. So each of us grew up in some sort of setting, a family, a community, a system of some sort. And there's rules, like this is how people behave, this is how things happen. Well, the monocultural mindset, early on, we sort of say, well, we assume everyone learned that. Everyone learned what we learned. That's the monocultural mindset. And then I get to some place, sometimes it's school, sometimes it's in, somewhere, sometimes it doesn't happen until we're adults. We go, whoa, I can't believe you don't know how to do this thing. Like, I can't believe you do it the way you do it, or I can't believe you saw it the way you saw it, or you reacted the way you reacted to me. Everyone knows that's not how you do that thing. That's the monocultural mindset. It's this notion that because I learned it, everyone else learned it too. We contrast that with later in the continuum, the intercultural mindset, which is recognizing that we each have our own unique way of having learned how the world works. It's a combination of our beliefs and our values, our interpretations, our experiences, and then what we've done with them and our choices. So that intercultural mindset, later in the continuum, we're operating from a place that goes, Stacy and I, we're different. Amber and I, we're different. We have different ways of seeing the world, experiencing the world, and the two of them, they may look kind of similar, but they have different ways between them as well. Siblings have different ways of operating. If you have a sibling who's an extrovert, a sibling who's an introvert, they experience the same party, the same gathering differently. So that's that notion of intercultural mindset. And recognizing that one way isn't innately better, isn't fundamentally better than the other, but they're different and it's important to pay attention to them. That's intercultural mindset. So in our development, we tend to start from a place of not noticing difference. So most of us, when we're very small children, everyone's just the same. Kids are kids, we're all the same. We don't sort of pay attention to the differences. And that's sort of this notion of denial. We miss differences, or we miss the significance of differences. At some point, we start to notice difference. And then what tends to happen is differences become really important. We go from, think about middle school, high school, and all the cliques, and all the, oh, you're not like us, you're one of them, you're not one of, all the stereotypes that happen in the world. People are different. People get associated with a group that we've assigned them to. Oh, these kinds of people are like that. We're this kind of people, they're that kind of people. So we stop seeing people as individuals, we see them as part of a group membership. That's this notion of polarization. We judge different. One's better, one's worse. Us, them, good, bad. If we move out of that as our default, and not everybody has, we move into minimization. And minimization is sort of this pendulum swinging back to commonality. In minimization, we go, you know what? That whole polarization thing, not so much. Don't like that. Don't want to be there. So we say, let's focus on commonality. So lots of us, and if we gather with a larger group of our family, if we have extended family, if that's the kind of family system we're connected to at this point in our lives, we might say, well, here's the rules. When we all gather, there's things we don't talk about. We don't talk about this. We don't talk about this. We don't talk about this. We just stated the things that we all agree on. That's minimization. In the workplace, even in friendships, someone might be different from me, but I don't explore that difference. I go, it's enough. We're so much alike. We don't have to pay attention to the difference. We don't have to pay attention to the difference. And for folks from majority culture, that might work much of the time because the norms get built around majority culture in terms of power, majority culture. But for folks who aren't a part of that, that feels really exclusive. It feels like I don't belong here. I'm not a part of this. I'm not seen. So minimization has the benefit of having everyone feel like, oh, we're all treated the same. But the same is based on a model that not everyone belongs to. That's minimization. If we move out of minimization, we move into acceptance. Acceptance is where we really are tuned into difference. Acceptance is where we go, I know there's similarities between us, and I know there's differences, and the differences are also important. So let me understand how you experienced it. So what does collaboration mean to you? Think about school projects. You had to work with people on the school projects. Like you go, I know what collaboration means. We all do 20%. There's 5 of us, we all do 20% of the work. Someone else goes, no. Collaboration means we all do it together. Now someone else says, no. I don't have much time to work on it. I'll do this little thing and you do the rest. You know, it's like people's notion of what it means to work together. People have different cultural experiences and that's an intercultural experience. Group projects are an intercultural experience that often creates a lot of tension because we haven't agreed upon how we're going to work together. We haven't agreed upon how we're going to work together. So when we get to acceptance and adaptation, it's about noticing the difference, paying attention to the difference, exploring the difference, and then fundamentally building agreements that allow us to work with people who are different from us in ways that work for both of us, for all of us. That's the journey. There's an assessment tool that goes with this, that was built out of this model, that allows us to understand both how we think about and desire to do things, and then how people often experience us with regards to these 5 strategies. Now, it's really important for us to recognize that no one is just one strategy. I believe all of us on this call sometimes operate from that place of polarization. Listen, I'm just right about this. This is a right-wrong issue. I'm just right. Sorry for you. Like, that's it. That sort of polarization we call polarization defense. I'm right. Sorry for you. You're wrong. We all probably operate sometimes from that minimization place. Well, that's, I can assume, I look at Brian, I go, boy, we both have beards. They look kind of great. Glasses, good forehead. Like, you and I are just alike, right? So I don't even have to ask you about you because I know what you're like. You're like me. Like, of course you're like me. We must be sort of somewhat in a similar generation. So I don't have to explore who you are. I can just assume you're like me. That's minimization. That's an assumption. And that's a problem. And that's a problem if I want to really find out who Brian is and how Brian experiences working on a team. That acceptance, I think we all do acceptance. Anyone here who has more than one friend and doesn't treat both of them the same, perhaps one of your friends really loves their birthday. Birthdays are important. Okay, pull out all the stops. We got to get big on birthday. And someone else who doesn't, you don't celebrate their birthdays exactly the same. You don't treat them exactly the same. We don't listen to our friends just the same in terms of giving advice and listening. So in our closest relationships, we tend to differentiate. And that's an example of acceptance. When we don't know people so well, we tend to do some of the minimization. When we really don't feel like we're connected or like the other people, we sometimes do more of that polarization. So the learning we can do from this is to be conscious of what's our default? And then what are the choices? You think about these 5 strategies as sort of different tools, like different tools in the kitchen. You don't use the same tool for everything in the kitchen. That's why I have a drawer full, right? I have a drawer full of stuff in the kitchen. It's because there's different tools for different times and different tasks. Maybe I'll stop there. Let me do one more application. So application, knowing self and understanding my own strategies. It's also about understanding where other people are coming from. understand where other people are coming. If I'm with people who are engaging in a particular way and I can understand how that is, then from this, I can develop strategies that work. If I'm messaging, I'm in business and I'm messaging to a broad spectrum of people, the same message that someone from one cultural group relative to positionality are going to hear the message differently than another group. So being conscious of that and building our language so that it fits with the audience, it connects with the audience and connects with the audiences is one of the things, one of the insights that come from understanding the intercultural model. At the interpersonal level, we tend to start to be able to understand cultural self, which is sort of what we talked about, kind of but we also start to understand cultural others. And when Stacy's going to talk just in a minute about another tool that helps us both understand self and others. And so this applies to that because it allows us to think about when I come up against or engaged with people who are different from me, what's my reaction? So let's leave it at that, Stacy, and have you go into the next piece.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. So one reason that this is such an important conversation for us, and we're talking about our group dynamics, is we think about how can we work together really effectively. And research has shown that one of the most important aspects of working together effectively is this thing called psychological safety. And that is all about creating trust and respect within your organization, within your classroom, within how many different areas that we intersect with in our lives. And a really important part of this is really, can we build up those areas where we can ask for help, we can take risks, we can feel like we have the trust and respect of our team members, and that we can work together, as Kevin was just talking about, to be a little bit more effective and to have a little bit of broader skill set when we are going out into the world. And so we're going to pull open that drawer and examine another really fun tool. So we think about how interconnected we are like never before in human history. We are connected across our communities. We are connected across our state. We are connected around the world. And so these are really valuable tools for you as you're on your journey, and having the tools to not only reflect about yourself and learn a little bit more about yourself. And as they always say, when you are boarding an airline, like think about, you have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you can, be out there and be of value, be of service to others. This is the same sort of concept. Like, we do self-exploration so that we better understand how we impact others and how we can create those cultures of trust and respect. So we are going to learn a little bit about a tool called the DISC model. And I got a really short video on what the DISC is.
What if people had their needs written all over them? If you knew that this person wanted more independence, and that person wanted a bit more reassurance, would it change the way you work together? Would it make your job easier? Yeah, it probably would. But that's not the real world. Or is it? Maybe if you had the right decoder, everyone's needs would be a lot more obvious. It would be clear how to work more effectively together, to be more productive, more satisfied. All you would need is a tool to help you understand where people are coming from. This is DISC, your decoder. It gives you a way to quickly understand the needs and priorities of the people around you. It describes 4 basic styles: D, I, S, and C. Here's how it works. First, everyone has a dot. That dot tells you your DISC style. For instance, if you have a D, or dominant style, you probably drive toward results, insist on immediate action, and challenge the status quo. Most likely, other people with the D style share your priorities, even though you might butt heads from time to time. Different styles may find this same D approach to be blunt, intimidating, or insensitive. If you have an I or influence style, you probably approach work with enthusiasm, enjoy collaboration, and take quick action. Others with the I style probably find your energy exciting, even if the two of you are a little too optimistic at times. Different styles may find this sort of liveliness and fast pace to be sloppy or reckless. Or you may have an S or steadiness style, which means you like to support people, maintain stability, and enjoy collaboration. People with the S style will probably appreciate your patient and easygoing nature, even if that means there's little sense of urgency. Different styles might see you as overly accommodating or indecisive. And finally, if you have a C or conscientiousness style, you probably focus on accuracy. Use your logic to challenge ideas and seek stability to ensure consistent outcomes. Others with the C style will like that you prioritize getting things right, even if the two of you can get bogged down in analysis. But for people with different styles, this cautious pace may feel dry, sapping their natural energy. Now, in the real world, it's not always that simple. Your dot can be between two styles, such as in the area between I and S, and you can have 4 or even 5 priorities. For example, in addition to collaboration, enthusiasm, and support, you might also share the priority of accuracy with your C coworkers. The point is, even though you need to recognize your own DISC style, you also need to know where the people you work with are coming from. Whether you're simply connecting with others, solving problems, or working through conflict, you'll have to stretch from time to time. And using DISC as a guide, you'll have a better sense of when and why that sort of adapting is so crucial to not only your success, but the success of everyone in your workplace.
Okay, so that really gives a great introduction to what this tool is all about and how it can be valuable when you look at when you're learning more about yourself and learning about what your colleagues need. And it's really built around this scale. And the one scale is whether you're a little bit more fast-paced, you're outspoken, or if you're on the other side of that, a little bit more cautious and reflective. Or the other scale on this that we're measuring with DISC is whether you're a little bit more accepting and warm or questioning and skeptical. And then you take an evaluation. So it's just a series of questions. And then it helps to identify where you might be on this grid. And as it said, it's not meant to pigeonhole or stereotype. It's meant to broaden, and so that we better understand, what feeds us at work, what engages us, what do we find energizing and motivating. And one of the most exciting things that I think about learning more about what you need and what your colleagues need is that you can figure out what feeds you, what builds you up, what energizes you, and then what drains you. So this is a really fun metric that just shows all the things that might be behind that we find motivating at work. And you can see that we're complex human beings and there's a lot going on for us. This can really help us better understand what we need at work to stay energized and engaged. And it can also help us understand what our colleagues need. So if you're working with someone who might be in that DISC, the D area, they may, these may be their motivators. They might like to have quick action. They might like to make decisions, move quickly. And so if you understand that about them, you can also understand, hey, here are some tips so that you can work more effectively with that person. You can better understand them, and you can be more effective in perhaps how you show up in the complex teams that you work on. So each one of the discs has those different motivators. So if you're up in the I area, these might be the things that motivate you. And here's some tips about how we can work more effectively with those folks that are in, that have that I energy. Here's some tips for working with the folks that might be in that S energy and have these motivators that they like to, be there as a real strong support to their team. And then how can you work more effectively with them? And then of course we have our C folks that bring that C energy to our teams and our organizations, and have better understanding that if this is you, these are some of the things that might be motivating you. These are some of the things that might be motivating your coworkers. Here's some tips that you can be a little bit more effective. And then I think one of the really fun things about DISC is that you can better understand when conflict erupts, that sometimes it's about butting heads over our styles. So you can imagine if you're a D and you like to make decisions, you like to move quickly, and you're working with a C who likes to dig in and take their time and analyze, you can imagine how that might create a little bit of conflict on that team, unless you can better understand yourself and better understand how to work more effectively together. So I am going to stop the screen share. And Amber, did you want to?
Yeah, I can take it from there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our presenters, Stacy and Kevin. That was a lot of really valuable information that you may not hear everywhere. So now we're going to open it up for questions. If there was anything going through either of the presentations with Kevin or Stacy that you had questions on, now's the time to ask. Is there anything that came up from those that you'd like to hear a little bit more about, or that you had questions on? Feel free to come off of mute and ask your question.
Yeah, it's Brian here. So on the fixed versus the growth mindset, I really like the idea of that, and I'm certainly open to making some changes within myself. But how would you try to encourage or motivate some, say, a coworker or even a peer family member, even to do such a thing? Do you have any suggestions?
It's a great question. And I know Amber and Kevin are both familiar with that concept of growth mindset. So I'll also invite you to jump in. I think one area for me that is helpful is helping me to, like if I've made a mistake, I've screwed up. And if I know that someone is there saying, us, we'll figure it out. We can get through this. We can figure it out together. That can help me shift from feeling like a failure into, feeling like, okay, I can get through this.
Yeah, so thanks, Stacy. And I would add to that. So I think there's some, in essence, it's coaching that we can do with one another. When someone says, I'm not good at, I can't do this. It's reframing. And, so I have 2 adult children. I do reframing with them still. But they've gotten pretty good at it themselves now because we've been doing it in our family so long. But you can do that with anyone, like helping someone when they could say, I can't do this, or this is impossible. It's, some empathy, right? Boy, it sounds like that just feels like it's just, how are you going to do that? And then reminding them, it's like, And you've done hard things before. I'm thinking there's other times that things have felt impossible and you figured them out. So it helps them, and even in the moment, because fixed mindset isn't like, which sports team you root for. You might always root for the sports team, but fixed mindset can be in the moment. Like, I'm in this place where I'm not seeing possibility. I'm just seeing this narrow, can't happen. So I think it's about helping people sort of bridge out of that. And I think language. And it might be asking a question, boy, I'm hearing it's impossible. I'm wondering if it feels like there's just no way to go forward. And they might say, well, no. Oh, because they might then change their own language. So sometimes it's just inviting them to explore whether that their language really reflects their experience and their perspective. So a couple thoughts I had.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, great question, Brian. And thank you, Stacy and Kevin, for the answer. Any other questions that came up from the presentations? Stacy, I'm curious if there's not any questions right now, if we could go back to that slide where you have the disc and you have each of the, the different categories there. I'm going to stop sharing a minute. And I'd be curious if our students would take a look at that. And if you were listening to that presentation and thought, oh, I think I may be over here, or I might be over there, I'd be curious to hear where maybe you feel like you related to some of those categories.
Motivators?
Or it was the one that had like all four that you could, yeah.
I'll go back to it here. Share. This one.
Yeah, this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if any of our students going through that, if there were any that stood out to you, I'd love to hear where you think you might fall on this diagram. So one of the resources that we're able to provide for students as part of the Student Connect programming this year is to be able to take that intercultural development inventory. So that's a 50 question, is that correct, Kevin? Assessment that you'll be able to go through and complete, and then you'll be able to do an hour debrief, or it's not an hour. I think I have the time wrong. Kevin, what is the time on that? Is it 90 minutes?
75 minutes.
75 minutes. That's what it was. A 75-minute debrief with Kevin. Actually, we have a grant to be able to provide that for students who want to participate in that. And it normally costs quite a bit. So it's a great opportunity. Please take advantage of that. I'm going to put a link in the chat where you can sign up to do that. And I'll be sending that out in an email as well. I'm in a follow-up email. Some other resources we'll be providing. We have some free personality profiles that you can go through and take a look at. They all are a little bit different, give you a little bit of a different perspective, and we'll be sending those out later this week as well.
So Amber, can I just a couple comments about personality profiles?
Yep.
I think, and one it's a caution, and the caution is, I don't believe any of these profiles are comprehensive enough to tell us who we are. So, so it's just, I just think that's an important thing to recognize. Nobody has built a tool that can tell us, oh, here's who you are. Like, that just doesn't exist to my experience and knowledge. And to Brian's point earlier, the situation we're in, the life stage we're in, the environments we're in can affect both our intercultural strategies and our DISC strategies. If you're in a space where, like, I have got to be on task all the time to get stuff done, I'm a student, but I'm this and this and this, it might be that you have to bring a lot of D energy to make sure things happen. And there might be space when that's all done, there might be a different energy that you sort of ground in more regularly or more naturally. And so they aren't fixed, and none of these can tell us sort of with a number who we are. So thanks, Amber. Just a couple cautions.
Great point. Thank you for bringing that out, Kevin. And that's part of the reason, you know, we talked about the DISC here today, and we have some of these other personality profiles. Looking at those different ones can give you different perspectives, but yeah, certainly cannot tell you who you are. Great point to bring out. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say something based off of what he said. And I totally agree with him, because I feel like coming from the lifestyle that I was raised in into the lifestyle that I'm becoming as an adult, my personality is making a major shift to become who I want to be, not who I had to be. So I agree, it's very situational how our personalities sometimes react.
Yeah. Great example, Jennifer. Thank you. So congratulations to our students who have completed the Student Connect program. If you've attended all 3 sessions, and then I know we've had some students attend our business meet and greets, we'll be sending you out a certificate of completion and then some language that you could add onto your resume, talking about some of the things you learned and did in this program. And then as far as moving forward, we'll have some continued opportunities for students that participated in this program. I am hoping to set up a one-on-one, well, it'll be a one-on-two, but it'll be a one student meeting with me and then our NORTHFORCE consultant, Allie. And before that meeting, I hope if you have a resume, you can send it over to us. And Allie, our NORTHFORCE consultant, will help you go over that resume, give you suggestions for things that you can improve or change on that resume. And then we can use that time also just to have a conversation about any way that we can help you in your career exploration or career search or professional development here in the Northland. So I'll be sending out an email for that as well, and hopefully all of you will sign up for a time to be able to do that little bit of a meeting. And then local chamber networking events. Most chamber of commerces in the area host some local events on a pretty regular basis. So I know we have a lot of students in the Itasca area. So Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce hosts different events there. And I would love to set up some times when we can get a group of students together to go to some of those events and really practice the networking skills, get to meet some people in the community, and take advantage of that. And we'll do the same thing with, you know, the chambers in Duluth or Superior or wherever the best fit would be for our students. But then you don't have to go alone. So we can help you sign up for it. If there's a registration fee, we can pay for that registration fee. And then you'll have at least one person that you know to go with you. So that also will be forthcoming in emails, hopefully coming up here soon when we find out what some of those events might be. And then just some different community involvement opportunities, like Jennifer mentioned at the beginning. We've been doing some different programming, and so you've seen some information about that. So finally, we filled out a survey at the beginning of our Student Connect session. I'm going to send that survey link out again. I will put it in the chat right now if anybody wants to fill it out now, but I will also send it out in that follow-up email. And hopefully we can get a little bit of a comparison if there's been some growth in some of those areas that you looked at in that first survey at the conclusion of this program. And then finally, this is our last Student Connect session, but we do have one more business meet and greet coming up on Tuesday, April 12th at noon, the same time as always. And we have some great presentations planned for that. We are going to have representative from the city of Duluth there talking at that one. We will have one of our, I think it's Family Forum, one of our childcare centers, and then we have one other presenter that will be at that session as well. So we hope to see you there. I know we're 2 minutes over time today, so I appreciate you all hanging out for a little bit. Thank you so much for being here. A huge thank you again to Stacy and Kevin for that great presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I can make sure those questions get to Stacy and Kevin, or if you have any questions at all about anything else you heard in the session today. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for coming to Student Connect.